welcome to this week's podcast. We are the Pomegranate Grove, and we are based all over the world, which we will tell you about in just a moment. But yeah, we all love tarot, we love astrology. Tonight is going to be a little bit different. We're going to sort of expand a little bit from our tarot and astrology, but anything to do with this sort of thing is right up our street. So anyway, I'm Mandy, also known as Mandy on the Moon, and I'm based in Cambridge, UK.
I'm Khalid, also known as Khalid of Wands, and I am based in Kuwait.
And I'm Cassidy the Cardslinger. I'm over on the west coast of Canada.
Just before you introduce yourself, Sharon, because you are the star, let's just quickly introduce our two amazing guests tonight. So we've got Pavlina. Tell everyone where you're from, Pavlina.
London.
Marvellous. And Kelly, where are you from?
From New Jersey in America.
Lovely. And they are kind of, supporters of what we do. And it's lovely to have them here tonight. But now I will pass you over to the star of the show. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sharon, aka Tarot Skwirl, and tonight we are going to do a project that I have been working on for going on a couple of years now. I think I'm not sure, but this is my passion. This is the reason I am here on Earth, I'm sure. But we are going to today we're going to talk about the mythology of astrology, the story of Aquarius. What is the mythology behind the avatar? And this is the kickoff for a monthly event we're going to be having starting in June, where I do the mythology of astrology for each star sign. As well, we're going to alternate between the history and the lore of each major arcana of the tarot. I'm very excited about this. Yes.
So we also have Ask the Expert on Monday, the 16th of May, 7 p.m. UK time. So if you have any questions about how to read the tarot, make sure to show up at this exciting event.
All right. So you guys just want to jump right in?
Yes.
All right. So as I said, today we're going to be talking about the mythology behind Aquarius. And this one is really cool because this is actually one of the oldest zodiac signs, and it predates even the Babylonian Empire era. The Babylonians, they found carvings of the sign of Aquarius on a lot of their stones. So this even predates that. And in Babylonian times, the sign of Aquarius was actually a terrible thing. It was equated to the Great Flood that's in almost every single cultural reference, including the Hopi Indians of the Southwest America who weren't even near a sea. They even have stories about the Great Flood. So Aquarius was related to the Great Flood that decimated the entire population, except for, in most cases, just 2 people who repopulated the earth. And it's also related to the rainy season in Babylon, where crops could not grow. So Aquarius people were pretty much considered bad luck in ancient Babylonia. That's pretty much all we know about that. Then we move on to the Greeks, and the Greeks were steeped in drought. The Greeks and the Egyptians had a great deal of drought in their country, so the rainy season was a good thing. However, the Greeks actually, when they first made the story of Aquarius, still equated it to the Great Flood. So I'm going to show you how it evolved from the Great Flood to what it is even today, when it was changed in the early 19th century, late 1800s. Okay. So really cool. It's like the mythology is always flowing, always changing from culture to culture, even sometimes region to region. So if I have the story a little differently than you've heard it, don't worry. It still tells the same overall story. I just may know some different details, or have learned different details than you have. So we're going to talk about the Greeks and what is Aquarius, aside from the Great Flood and aside from the bad rainy season. So the Greeks talked of a young boy named Ganymede. And Ganymede was the son of Tros and Calero. And Tros was from, let me see, I have to look it up because Dardania, I would have said that so wrong, which was on the coast of Troy. And Troy is where the great war with Helen of Troy and the face that moved 1,000 ships. So that's important to the story later when we get to the Romans. But Tros was Ganymede's father. Calero was his mother. And Tros absolutely despised Ganymede. Ganymede was the most beautiful child in the world, and people would come from all over the world to see this beautiful, beautiful boy. Not only did he have the physical beauty, but he also had empathy and compassion. He was one of the best listeners. Even as a little boy, he not only heard what people said and didn't interrupt them, he actually was able to read between the lines and understand what they were really saying. So he had this amazing beauty to him that his father absolutely despised, because as a boy, he had been beautiful as well. And he was the one people came to see. And so now that it was Ganymede that everyone was coming to see, he was like, I really hate this kid. I really think this kid needs to go. Just pure, absolute nasty jealousy, okay? So Zeus, Zeus is the god of the sky. He's like the god of the gods. He's the king of the gods, right? I have to explain that before I tell you what he's going and doing. Zeus from Mount Olympus heard of Ganymede, and he's like, huh, I gotta see this child. I really, really got to see this child. This can't be true. There's nothing that beautiful. So he went to Dardania and he saw Ganymede and he was like, oh my God. Oh my God. I have to have this child. I have to have him. And he couldn't just walk up and take him. I mean, who does that? Well, Zeus could, but he actually respected the beauty of Ganymede. So instead, he summoned his eagle by the name of Aquila, Aquila. And Aquila came to Zeus, and Zeus said, get me that kid, bring him to Mount Olympus, bring him straight to me. Don't take him anywhere else. Just do this. And Aquila was very, very loyal to Zeus. He didn't ask questions. He was just like, as you command. And he flew down to where Ganymede was tending some sheep. And he said to Ganymede, come with me. I got the coolest thing to show you. Ganymede took one look at this eagle, and he'd never seen anything so gorgeous. He was used to people telling him how beautiful he was, but he had no arrogance. He had no ego. He had no, I'm the greatest. And now he finally understood what beauty was. He was like, whoa. So he just totally trusted this eagle in its beauty, climbed on its back and flew away to Olympus. Zeus was like, oh yeah, yeah. So he got Ganymede, and he fell in love. He spent a little time with Ganymede, and he was like, I cannot put this child to work, hard labor, or anything else that a human would do in Mount Olympus. So he made Ganymede his cupbearer. And what a cupbearer is a server of wine, usually in a palace or a castle or to a lord. But he made Ganymede his personal cupbearer. There was a goddess named Hebe, Hebe, who was also a cupbearer to all the gods. And Zeus planned to put her in Hebe's place because Hebe was about to marry Hercules, one of the greatest demigods, half human, half god, that ever graced the earth. And she was going to marry him and be elevated to a higher status. She was the goddess of youth and beauty. So that's going to factor in. So fast forward a couple of days, and Tros, Ganymede's father, kind of notices that his kid is missing. Took him a minute. He's like, at first he was relieved Then he started asking around, what happened to my kid? You know? And when he got wind that they saw the kid fall onto the giant eagle's back and fly away, he knew he was in for a profit. And he started wailing and crying and acting all kinds of, oh my God, my son, my beautiful son, I can't live without my child. Bastard, right? Treated Ganymede like absolute trash until he knew he could get a profit. Word got back to Zeus that this father was really distressed and that he was going to petition the gods to have Ganymede back. And Zeus was like, oh, damn, I'm not letting this kid go. Well, Ganymede heard through the grapevine, and Ganymede went to Zeus and said, please, please compensate my father generously. You know, he loves me. All this time, Ganymede thought his father hated him. And all he really ever wanted was the love of his daddy. And now he's finding out that man does love me. So he's like, please, Zeus, please compensate my father well. So Zeus, he was already totally in love with Ganymede. So he got together the finest herd of horses on Mount Olympus, and he got out a bottle of the best Olympian wine. We're talking nectar of the gods here to give to a mere human for a mere human. So he summoned Hermes, who was the messenger of the gods, and said, go take this to Tros and make a trade. So Mercury just flew off and went to Tros and did his finest, because Mercury, he was a charmer. He was going to charm Tros into this trade because he knew it wasn't really even. Horses for this most beautiful child in the world. And Tros put up a good fight. He bargained. He was a merchant. So he bargained. He put up a fight, and he even got that bottle of wine, and I think he even got some gold out of it. And Mercury put his hand out and said, deal. Tros shook it, and then he spit. And he said, I would have traded that little bastard for a cup of the cheapest wine. Walked away. And Mercury was pissed. What a jerk. And he went back and he told Zeus. Hera was in the room with Zeus. So by this time, Hebe's retired. She went in. Remember, Hebe was the original cupbearer. Hebe retired, married Hercules, and Ganymede became the cupbearer for all the gods. Okay? So Zeus gave him this special ability to be able to call any liquid to him to the vase he was carrying, whether it be nectar, ambrosia, wine, water, whatever any god wanted at any time, Ganymede had and was able to pour for them. So Hera was a little miffed. She tried to say that she didn't like Ganymede because Ganymede took her daughter Hebe's place as the cupbearer. But Hebe had willingly given up the position to marry Hercules. Not only that, she was the goddess in youth and beauty, the only god in the world that could bestow immortality, immortal youth and beauty on anybody, or recall youth and beauty to an older person. And she loved Ganymede so much that she gave him eternal youth and beauty so that he would never change in appearance. Every single god just adored him. Remember, he wasn't just physically beautiful, he was empathic, he was compassionate, he was a listener, and he was also a great sex partner for each and every single god. He was up for anything, he loved to have fun, and they adored him. He was like the best thing since sliced bread. Now, he was immortal, but he was still human. But they saw him as like a brother to the gods. And this just pissed Hera off even more. You got to remember, she's Zeus's wife, and Ganymede became Zeus's favorite lover. Now, imagine, you can't blame her, being the goddess of hearth and home and Zeus's wife, and he's off messing around with not just every Tom, Dick, and Mary, but he's got a favorite lover who lives right under her nose. Woof. Can we blame her for what happens next? Yes and no, because she didn't know the extent of it. So she got Ganymede alone. She cornered him. And she said, "Oh, you think you're special, don't you?" He was like, yes, I do. My father loves me. The gods love me. I have a real place in the world now. And she's like, you're like a favored dog, a cur, a piece of property. Ganymede was like, what? you, surely you just, no, they love me. She said, come here. I got something to show you. And she took her to his chambers, and she had a divining station in the middle of her chambers. She waved her hand, and he watched as Hermes bartered with his father. And she said, listen closely. And at the end, when Tros said, I would have traded him for the cheapest cup of wine, Ganymede turned just pure white. And he started shaking. Tears welled up in his eyes. And he's like, oh my God, oh my God. And then she said, and Zeus bought you. You are a piece of property. You are a favored dog. And your dad does not love you. He never loved you. And look at him now. And she waved her hand, and he saw his father in the stable with the head horse, the most beautiful stallion, and his father petting the stallion and telling him how much he loved it, how much he wished it was his son. And Ganymede, shaking, tears running down his face, threw his head back and screamed. And that's when Hera barred the door. And Ganymede took his jug and just threw it at the stallion, threw it, knocked the stallion on its head, knocked it out, hit the ground, and his father started screaming, no, 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 no. And then Ganymede started calling every vessel in the Mount Olympus to him, throwing every piece of liquid, every vessel that had anything in it. He even pulled from the great river that ran down Mount Olympus and threw it all at his father's stable. And the great flood loosed. He threw water, wine, tears streaming down his face, adding to the mixture until Dardania was no more. Dardania ceased to exist, and the great flood took over all the worlds. Meanwhile, Zeus and all the other gods see this flooding happening, and they're trying to get into Hera's chambers. They see all the liquid in Mount Olympus just disappearing, and they know it's Ganymede. And they're trying to stop him because, first of all, patricide, killing your father, was executable by death. It was a crime, just not accepted. Don't laugh at me, Paul. Sorry. He laughed at me because I said executable by death. So it was an unpardonable crime. And second of all, he loosed the great flood. He was killing everything and everyone, every man, woman, child, animal, plant, anything that lived or breathed was gone. And they were trying to get in before it got too late. And Hera just stood there, tears running down her own face because she did not understand the extent of Ganymede's pain, his desperate need to be loved, not just by his father, but by the gods he served. And finally, after everything was dead, Zeus and the other gods made it into the room. And Hera looked at Zeus and said, no, no, I didn't mean for this to happen. This wasn't supposed to happen. Please spare him. I did not know his pain. And Zeus just cried and said, Hera, he has to die. And he reached down and he touched Ganymede's hair and he kissed him. And then he killed him. And then the other gods came and said, we loved him. He meant so much to us. And every single god formed a line, every god on Mount Olympus, to tell Zeus about their love for this beautiful, beautiful, tragic young boy. So he took Ganymede's soul and he set him into the sky. It was the constellation Aquarius, so that he could see, finally, that he was loved. And that is the Greek story of Ganymede. Let me wipe my eyes. I'm sorry. It's a very emotional story to me. It was the Romans around 5 AD. No, BC. 5 BC. I get them all backward. The Romans shared heavily in the mythology of the Greeks. In fact, they borrowed mythology from the Greeks. And the Romans saw the story of Ganymede. And they were like, that's just wrong. That is so wrong. No, we do not accept this story. And the Romans had a very big thing about seeing both sides of a thing. They were huge into balance. So they studied all the people born under Aquarius, and they noticed the different traits, not just the bad luck, not just the tragedy, not just the anger and rebellion that Aquarius could show. And they were like, okay, we can tell the same story. But in this story, Tros loves Ganymede. And Tros is the king of Troy in Roman mythology. But he loves his son. And Zeus pays for him up front. And when he takes Ganymede to Mount Olympus, Ganymede feels nothing but love. Even from Hera. She doesn't like him, but she's not a bitch to him. What happens in the Roman story is that when Troy is invaded in the Trojan War, Dardania was actually an ally with Troy. So a lot of Dardania's people were killed, and the Trojans. I mean, it was a brutal war. And there were fires everywhere. There was drought. People were dying left and right. And when Hera showed him what was going on in Troy at the time, his heart broke. His heart broke. And he couldn't stand to see his people suffering. And he started to cry. And his tears never stopped. His tears pulled all the liquids from Mount Olympus until the droughts were cured, the fires were put out, and his people were saved. But it depleted all of his energy, and he died. He died crying to save his people. And that's when Zeus put him in the sky in the Greeks. Now, it wasn't until about the 13th century that Ganymede was seen as the avatar for homosexuality because of his love affair with Zeus. How I think that Ganymede was more pansexual, but in the 19th century, when the word homosexual was coined, Ganymede was made the god of homosexuality. So he was never a god until the 19th century. And that is the story of Aquarius. Any questions?
Wow, that was amazing. Gosh, and I love the passion with which you were telling the story. You just really made it come alive,
Thank you.
And yeah, the Greek version is just like, on the one hand, it's really tragic, but I think because of just all of the emotional intensity in it, the tragedy is appealing, you know, at least as a spectator, someone far removed from the action. It's just like, wow, that's a damn good story, it's just so
And
good.
in both cases, Ganymede, he's like that beautiful balance. Well, not balance because he really went off kilter, but in both cases, he has emotion. And modern astrology is always saying those are the ice princes and princesses, that they have no
Yeah.
feelings. And that always throws me off.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting because I feel like a lot of actually, I'm not even sure if it's limited to modern astrology, but a lot of like astrological interpretations of the psychology of each sign, they depend on the element and the modality. And so for Aquarius, they go like fixed air. So then that evokes some kind of like, a predisposition to analyze things from a distance, intellectually being very cerebral, having a head-heart gap, etc., etc. So yeah, I don't know how that all that ties in with the Ganymede myth. I just think it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It did show the humanitarian side of him, though, in quite a big way,
Yeah.
and that's associated with Aquarius, isn't it?
Yes, and the rebellion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did show both sides of that.
So I wanted to ask actually, ask and maybe comment a bit about the earlier versions of the myth, so before the Greeks, the Mesopotamian ones. And I know, so you said, I remember you said that, so there were some versions of the myths going on there that saw the Aquarius season as just the rainy season and therefore good for crops, and others, I think, saw it as bringing too much water and then being dangerous for the crops. Am I right?
It was seen as a very bad sign, an unlucky sign, because no crops could grow during the rainy seasons.
But it wasn't seen that way uniformly, right? So some people saw it as...
No. Most of the Greek mythology was steeped in Mesopotamia, that word, and Babylonian mythology. So a lot of it sprang from that, even though it was ancient to the Greeks. A lot of the stories sprang from those cultures. So they drew on that, but they made their own stories as well. Yeah.
Right. Okay. No, I'm interested in this point about Aquarius season being good for the crops, like the rainy season, because I just discovered just today, actually, and just kind of doing some quick reading about Aquarius. So you know how a lot of, like maybe a majority, I'm not sure, someone would have to correct me about this, the majority of the names of the stars that were discovered before astronomy developed scientifically in a Western setting, right? So majority of the names were originally derived from Arabic, because the study of astronomy flourished during the Islamic period, when most of the astronomers working were either Arab or Arabic speaking. And so there are a couple of stars I discovered in the constellation of Aquarius that express good fortune, right? So if you look, if you can, I don't know if you can do this, but if you don't have to, I can just read it for you. But in the drawing I have behind me, which is of the constellation Aquarius, you have one name, Sa'd al-Saud. This is, I can't point out to you, but it's by his left shoulder, okay, and it means this means the fortune of fortunes. And then right on his beard there's Sa'd al-Malik, which means the fortune of the king. And then there are other two stars also with the name of fortune. One is like the fortune of the merchant, and the other is the fortune of the dwellings. They're not displayed here, and so I think it's interesting how I love how your story, it just kind of gave the background to that. I was wondering before I heard your story, why is it being so, why are there all of these positive names there for the stars in the constellation, for some of the stars in the constellation, and then your story explained it. So
I love
yeah.
the mythology and how it explains things, and how the stories aren't so much to tell you this is Aquarius, but it's to help you understand aspects of whatever it's telling the story about. They're life lessons, just like most, religions, mythology, any of that are life lessons. And I love understanding the mythology behind, especially the zodiac signs, just to give me a little extra understanding about the sign itself, how it evolved over time and through different cultures to what it is now.
Yeah.
I
That's pretty
definitely
amazing.
think there's a kind of like a shock for everybody that Aquarius is air, because especially me being Aquarius, but I think everybody just assumed it was a water sign because the symbolism is like the water carrier, and the story, like when you're talking about the floods and all of that sort of thing, like where it's come from, very much sort of like lends itself to all this kind of like supposition that it's a water sign, but it's an air sign, and I don't quite understand where that came from. Do you know that?
I think that really applies to Ganymede's charm and his ability to speak to anyone and anything. To be able, that compassion and empathy he felt, where when he listened, he really heard what people were saying. That takes intellect, not just emotion. So he is intellect and emotion, but it was his intellect that everyone found beautiful.
Right.
Not just his physical body.
And isn't the name Ganymede, is it a Saturn moon or a Jupiter moon?
It's a Jupiter moon. It's a Jupiter moon. And if you guys, let me find my paper. You knew you had to say it. So Ganymede, I mean, we got to go into the linguistics too, because what kind of nerd would I be without the linguistics, right? So Ganymede is derived from the Greek words ganamai, which means gladdening. He made everybody happy. And medon or medion, prince or genitals. And the name may have been formed to contain the deliberate double meaning.
Wow, it's prince or genitals?
Yeah.
I love that. You normally don't think of them together, right? That's hysterical. I was thinking if maybe the air part might have been derived from the role of the eagle,
Oh,
Like
yeah.
the eagle flying through the air, being like the lord of the air, a bird who's like the lord of the air,
But he plays such a small part in a lot of the stories. From region to region. Sometimes it's Aquila that gets him, and sometimes Zeus turns into an eagle to come get him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? Cassidy, you got anything?
I just thought that story was amazing. That was so well told by you, and very well researched and delivered. Like amazing job on that, Sharon. I don't have any questions. I'm just like, that was really fascinating. Oh, I guess I do have a question. As you are, a tarot reader and an astrologer, and you're also into mythology, do you ever weave or use, like, does any of this ever become relevant in any of your readings?
Yes, actually, very rarely, but there are times that it does.
Cool.
Knowing the stories, it gives me a deeper understanding. It's the mythology and the lore and even the evolution from one thing to another. One of my favorite stories is the High Priestess, because it was that mythology that really led me to understand that card in a way that I had never understood it before.
Very cool.
So it's very exciting to me. Yes.
It's amazing.
It's like one of the things that's really fascinating to me is that how different cultures can kind of adopt mythologies from earlier cultures and then really change them in ways that might seem to make them unrecognizable. But then if you read deeply into the new version of the myth, you can find continuities, right?
Oh, yeah. The Greeks and the Egyptians borrowed from each other all the time. In
Yeah,
fact, Ganymede also weighs heavily Aquarius into Egyptian mythology because Egypt, they had seasons of drought. So Ganymede for Egypt, Aquarius was this, he poured the river Nile down on the seasons when the Nile would flood over and renew the countryside. So they
right.
just kind of like interchanged them back and forth, but called them different things and had different stories for them.
Right.
Yeah.
So then for the Egyptians, so he was like maybe like maybe a divine kind of power figure. There's a man with the water-bearing cups pouring them down in the rainy season, right? And
Yeah.
then that part continues in the Greek and Roman versions of the myth with the tears of Ganymede, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's so fascinating that people just like have like culture has such an intelligent imagination, you know, that it can
Yeah.
adapt something, transform it, but still retain something of the original. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you everybody for coming.
One more comment. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, the fact that this goes right back to ancient mythology, and it is a very gay story, you know. I mean, doesn't it sort of surprise you that even now there is still kind of like, you know, issues with people being gay? I can't believe that, you know, being gay was like an openly told story all those years ago, you know, and yet it's been very difficult to be a gay person right up to and including recently in some cultures.
Actually quite common for the Greeks at that time to take on young boys between 12 and 19 as lovers. Nobody thought anything about it. Christianity, you know, put in the Bible, thou shalt not lie with another man. So it was really Christianity or people with different moralistic views that made those moralistic views the culture of that time. You know, that was forced on them. And then it was in the 19th century that a lot of gay men, that they had wives and had to meet other men in secret, and they revered Ganymede because he represented the freedom to love in whatever way he chose.
Right. I think
and
also that, sorry, go ahead, Sharon.
a lot of times, and I do not mean this in any derivative way at all, a lot of times Aquarius will be seen as the freaks, the sex fiends, the ones who will try anything. And it goes with that too, because for so long, homosexual meant freak, you know? And I do not mean anything derivative by that at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say, like, in response to Mandy's question, that really like same-sex practices became kind of marginal and pathologized, but mostly in response to two historical processes. One was the establishment of the nation state, like after the end of the medieval period, because that necessitated the definition of a nuclear family as the basic social unit.
Yeah.
Right. So then there had to be like a marriage between a man and a woman, you know, and then children who could continue that structure. So they had to be straight, right? So that was one element of it. And then the other element was the development of the medical establishment, which became more and more like, let's say, not orthodox, standardized towards the late 19th century, which is also when the term was coined, homosexuality, right? And there's some really brilliant theorists who took that up, like how it was actually, the medical normalization of the human, the standardization of the human, that then led to the marginalization of particular sexual preferences and activities. Yeah.
Is the name Ganymede got any kind of significance with the word gay?
That's a
don't think
really good
so.
question. I don't know.
I don't think so. I think gay is a Germanic in origin.
And it
Okay.
originally
Usually
meant
this-
happy, right?
Yes,
Joyful.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yes, yeah.
Which he was, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah, he showed that anyway.
Oh, okay, I was wrong. So it's originally from Old French, gay, but it didn't have that sense of homosexual in that time.
Nothing
Yeah.
to do with Ganymede.
I was like 7 and I went outside and I was like, Mom, my brother and all his teenage friends were there. And I said, I feel so gay today. And they all laughed at me. And my brother was like, oh my God, she did not just say that. I thought it meant happy. I think that's been changed in this century. Well, no, wait, which century are we in? The last century.
That was amazing, Sharon. That was
Yeah.
wonderfully brilliant. Well done.
Thank
I've
you.
got a quick
Thank you.
question. I absolutely love it. So where we can sign up for this meetup for mythology, because this is absolutely brilliant stories. I want to hear more.
They should be posted on our website as scheduled events, and you can find us at meetup.com if you type in the Pomegranate Grove under search. And our website, thank you, Pavlina, is www.thepomegranate.grove.com. I do believe that Patreons will have access to this. This will be a Patreon event. And anyone else, it'll just be £5 per session to
I
learn
can't wait.
all about
It's
the
amazing.
major arcana and the zodiac. I can't wait to tell you. Oh gosh, there's so many. I can't wait to tell you. Libra, and Scorpio, and Aries. Okay, I'm okay.
Also, if you want to stay up to date with all of our stuff, come and join us on the Pomegranate Grove Lounge. It's on Facebook. It's a free group, but you just have to request to join because we've had some random fake accounts floating in. So we did have to make it a private group, but it's free and everyone's welcome to join. And we do have a contest running in there still. We've announced it the last couple of weeks, but in case you missed it, find the post on there that is to suggest a podcast topic. And if we pick your topic, you get to come to the podcast, ask us the question live, and we will record it and answer your question there. So head on over to the lounge to, tell us what you want us to talk about, and you can come talk about it with us. It'll be really fun. What else is going on? So yeah, I mean, we all do lots of cool stuff. Every one of us does readings. We have courses on the go. We have a Udemy course. We've got another course coming out, the first term of our professional tarot readers course. That one's coming up very soon. So take a look at that. We have Patreon packages. We do, 3 to 5 events every week. All kinds of cool stuff. So come and hang out with us. We'd love to meet everybody. And like Sharon said, everything can be found on our website, www.thepomegranate.grove.com. Also on YouTube, depending on where you're listening to this, you might be watching us on YouTube, but we have a very thriving YouTube page. So check that out as well. Did everybody freeze?
Nope, we're all waiting for Mandy. Mandy?
No, it's you, Sharon.
Oh, so everybody thinks
The script is going really well this week, isn't it, everyone?
Wait, I don't have that page. What's next?
Like, subscribe.
Oh, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Ring the bell if you want to be notified of any of our new videos. And you can catch us on Spotify, iTunes, Audible, lots of different platforms that would probably take me an hour to tell you about, but look us up. And thank you for coming.
Thank you
And
all
lastly,
very much.
sorry,
Oh, yeah.
the very final thing is also, if you are a Patreon of any tier, we're going to read your name out at the end of our podcast. So if you want to hear your name, come and join one of our Patreon tiers. So we have, in no particular order, just happens to be the one that Patreon is giving it to me today. Ia, Kelly, Joe, Maisie, Pavlina, Danielle, Dean, and Kevin. Thank you guys for making this so much more fun.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Well done,
Fabulous
Sharon.
job,
Yeah.
Sharon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for engaging with us. Please like, subscribe and share. To book a personal, in-depth reading and to learn more about our incredible courses in tarot and astrology, please visit our website www.thepomegranategrove.com.